Hi, I've talked in a previous video about four obsessions of New Agey psychology, which is probably dominated by therapists with avoidant or chaotic attachment, reducing relationships to power, loving oneself is the goal of life, how other people can't fill our holes, and how all the ills of the world can be traced to childhood trauma. This video is about a fifth psychological obsession, namely responsibility. What is responsibility? In social situations, it's specialized tasks an individual does for a group or other members of a group, usually in exchange for certain privileges or rights for being part of the group. It doesn't have to be spelled out as in Rousseau's social contract, and many times it's just understood who is responsible for what. This is responsibility to others. It also has a meaning that is different when used as self-responsibility. It means that one does not blame others for one's words and deeds, but either takes credit or blame for them oneself. It also means that one tries to treat oneself well instead of recklessly. This is responsibility for oneself. What about responsibility for others? We seem to be okay as a culture with it being for our children or elderly parents or employees or pets, where there is an ability or power differential. What about being responsible for romantic partners who are sharing power with us, as in actively looking out for each other's best interests? Stan Tatkin advocates this in Wired for Love, but most New Agers think that's codependence and only want to be responsible for themselves in a romantic relationship. I've noticed, along with others like Raderly Phoenix, that codependence is overused and mostly to shame anxious attachment folks. But if it's seen as a trait with a spectrum, Raderly has speculated that not only does avoidant attachment result from incoming boundary violations and anxious attachment results from outgoing boundary violations, but avoidant attachment and narcissism are correlated, as are anxious attachment and codependency. All these traits should be measurable on a spectrum, by the way, so these speculations could be tested empirically with surveys. But doing science about attachment and trauma is hard, and it's also hard to go from populations to individuals, for example, me and my partners. The early pioneers such as Harlow, Bowlby, and Ainsworth did good science. We need to keep doing that. There are now criteria and online tests, but I don't know how good these are. For example, I thought I had an anxious attachment style because I had some outgoing boundary violations in my early childhood. But it doesn't quite match up because I have high self-esteem. I enjoy doing my own thing in a relationship, not just with my partner. I'm not very needy in a relationship unless my partner is unable to talk about my or her relational needs and has an ideology about it that meeting partner's needs is bad. I also expect to meet my partner's relational needs, and I expect her to meet mine. I don't need constant reassurance, and I don't have a fear of the relationship ending. I'm sometimes shocked when it does end. I thought I had anxious attachment also because a specific trauma gets triggered if the relationship is ended unilaterally by my partner and she asks for no contact. But apparently that doesn't make me anxious. I took a test and scored as secure attachment. Still, I don't trust this test. It needs to be improved. The point is not to put people in boxes, but to find correlations that lead to more understanding of feelings, thoughts, and behavior, and from understanding proceed to healing individuals and their relationships to help them either gain more secure attachment, which is shown to lead to greater happiness in relationships, or cope better with their insecure attachment style. I've gotten some self-understanding knowing that I'm attracted to avoidant and chaotic women for romantic relationships. So I could just avoid them, but deeper self-knowledge seems to be in the direction of confronting this challenge instead of fleeing from it. I've also gotten clearer that even slight expressions of anger that would not faze people with a secure attachment style totally trigger avoidant and chaotic folks, especially if they haven't had the time to build trust, which for them could take years, even if they are doing therapy. So I need to figure out better ways of communicating my anger with them. Another example of how theory can lead to better understanding. I'm perplexed about why avoidance or chaotic folks are ideologically opposed to being partially responsible for someone's well being by helping them meet their needs in a romantic relationship. Relationships could be so much better without this toxic ideology. What is driving it? So far, I have a bit of science and a lot of speculation. I don't think that the stigma of codependency and feeling superior to those poor anxious codependents totally explains why avoidants are so afraid of being partially responsible for their partners and having their partners be partially responsible for them. Is it because they have been abused by incoming boundary violations and as adults don't know how to share power except by being dominated in bed and dominating and bullying outside of bed? Being violated by one's family in childhood makes one not want to be responsible for anyone except those who can be dominated or ignored. The people who dominated them as a child probably also had needs they wanted to be met. So now a partner with needs who reminds them of their original trauma is the devil. The avoidants are often overwhelmed by the demands that the world makes on them, even outside of romantic relationships. So they don't need any extra responsibility. Children and pets are more than enough responsibility for them. What if we expanded our circle of responsibility to our family and our tribe or village, as in responsible for them, not just to them? What if we love them too, not just ourselves? It's almost like we need to learn from the past in order to have a viable future. The humanist and Christian vision of loving the whole of humanity stands no chance if we can't even love our tribe or other people in our nation. Just like we need to go beyond loving ourselves to loving our family and then our tribe, then our nation, then maybe other nations. Maybe we can go beyond loving our tribe and loving the whole of humanity, even beyond that, to other living beings. Of course, none of it is going to happen unless we deal with our traumas, in particular our childhood attachment traumas. Well, and then there's also other factors like socioeconomic factors. If you live in a society which traumatizes not just children but adults every day, um, it's going to be hard to deal with just childhood traumas unless some of those socioeconomic factors change as well.